When we're recording this episode, the stock market is down. Many are grieving their personal losses and are stressed about what could be coming in the months and years ahead. We're told to trust that the market always goes up over the long term. We're told we can get 8% or even 10% or more if we're just patient enough. But there's this growing sense in a larger and larger number of Americans that their accounts are more like the collateral damage of a system rigged to make others rich. Today, we're going to dig into why we're grieving. Then we're going to reveal the weapons of math destruction commonly used to coax families to go into and stay in the market. And finally, we're going to offer a way forward with hope. Hi, I'm Amanda, and welcome to the Wealth Wisdom Financial Podcast, episode 112, Stock Market Loss, Stop Being the Collateral Damage of Math, M-A-T-H, Math Destruction.
Hey, and I'm Brandon, and if talking about abusive relationships is a trigger for you, I want you to skip ahead just 1 minute. When I first dug in and learned about the stock market, how it really works, I almost immediately felt the same emotions and stress from an abusive relationship that I had experienced in my life. I could almost hear the words from the stock market as if my family member was saying it. It sounded so similar and eerie. And these similar things are saying, or why are you making such a big deal out of this? Don't worry about it. It's for your own good. These things of, it just happened once. It's not going to happen again. It's going to bounce back. They're not going to mean it. Those kind of things. And there's even gaslighting with it. And whenever, I was in this relationship, I'd hear, you're just too sensitive, or other ways of gaslighting to make you feel like you are in the wrong position when you knew you weren't. And that was just invalidating the feelings that I had experienced in that abusive relationship. Now, the stock market is, in my opinion, very similar in that regard.
Yeah. And I would say some of this comes not only from us hearing what people say about the stock market, but also hearing from the people we work with and talk to on a daily basis, how they feel about the stock market in real time as it happens. And I've known Brandon for a long time now. I've come to know he is a very empathetic person. It's actually one of his strongest character traits. And just like someone would reach out to a professional to heal from verbal abuse, I totally think one of Brandon's strongest roles as a financial professional is to help people heal from stock market abuse and to really, be that listening ear, hear them share their real feelings and not invalidate them, but hold them up and help them move to a better place. So if you're feeling at all like you're grieving and you've been in this abusive relationship and you want to find a way out, I totally recommend reaching out to Brandon, scheduling a time with him. We'll put a link in the show notes. Pretty easy though. You just go to grandmaswealthwisdom.com and there's a request a meeting button in the top right-hand corner of every page. So we want to share that, not just to get you to talk to Brandon, but also to say your feelings are real. And we want you to acknowledge them and sit with them for a second. We're going to help you see kind of where they come from a little bit. And then we're also going to show you how you could experience joy with money as we go forward here.
Yeah. And I do think some of the empathetic ness in there is because of being in that experience myself from a physical person and seeing that parallels, and if you've never been in that position, you might not experience or see those parallels, right? And that's what's really made me look at this from a different lens. And here's the thing. Are you sick and tired of hearing those same old conventional financial advice, right? The same old things that the stock market will tell us. I mean, we feel you. We're fed up with the same old truisms that fall flat when you get into the unique opportunities and challenges of your own specific situation. And this show is all about bringing you historic wisdom around building wealth with practical insights on how to apply it to your unique journey. When conventional financial thinking doesn't get you to where you want to go, you need wealth wisdom. So let's master wealth building together. You ready to go, Amanda?
I am. I do have a quick heads up for our awesome, faithful podcast listeners. Thank you so much for listening faithfully all the time. We do have some visuals that go along with today's episode. So you might really enjoy viewing this one or at least skimming through it over on YouTube. So we're going to put a link to the YouTube version of this in the show notes. For our faithful podcast listeners, though, we're still going to do our best to make it work verbally for you. But if you're feeling like, I really want to see that, then come over and join us on YouTube to see what we're showing.
And we're doing a lot more YouTube things and graphs and things like that, because again, looking at the actual numbers and looking at how it actually plays out, that's important to see. So
yeah, and I'm a visual learner, so it really helps me as well.
So first thing we want to do is play a game, and Amanda has done this game with me twice over the past year, and I didn't even know that it was the second time, right? And I said the same thing each time, because I guess my memory is not that great. I didn't even realize, and I'll give you time to decide your responses, and I'm going to answer the same as I did last time, right? So I do remember now what I said, but I'm going to answer like I said last time when she was doing the quiz for me.
And this is a game that I learned about as I've been studying to be a certified financial planner. It's one that's commonly used by experts to show a particular cognitive bias. I might have changed the parameters a little bit, but it's basically the same game. So I want to give credit where credit's due. Here's how it goes. Now, there's no real money changing hands here, but let's pretend I just gave you $1,000. Then I give you a choice. We can either flip a coin or not flip a coin. If we flip the coin and it lands on heads, I'm going to give you another $1,000. And if it lands on tails, you get to stay at just 1,000, right? No more money is going to exchange hands. If you choose not to flip the coin, then I'm going to give you another $500. What do you choose? Do you flip the coin? Do you not flip the coin?
I'm going to choose B, the extra $500.
Yeah, and not flip the coin.
Flip and just make some money.
Okay. Now, let's say I give you $2,000. Okay, we're starting all over. I give you $2,000, but I give you the same choice: flip a coin or not flip a coin. If we flip the coin and it lands on heads, you're going to give me $1,000. Or if it lands on tails, you keep the full $2,000. Or if we skip the coin flip, you're just going to give me $500. Which one do you choose?
In this case, I think I'm going to choose A, to flip the coin, because I don't want to guarantee that I'm going to lose $500, right? I mean, that seems obvious.
Yeah. So from what I understand about this game, a lot of people share what Brandon just did. They choose not to flip the coin in the first scenario, and then they flip the coin in the second one. But really, if we had no cognitive biases, your answers are supposed to be the same. You either choose to flip the coin in both, or you choose not to flip the coin in both. In both scenarios, if I go back here to the $1,000 one, you either end up with $1,000, $2,000, or $1,500. They're all three the same, or like those are the three options. Same with the second scenario, you either end up with $2,000, $1,000, or $1,500. But more often than not, people choose kind of how Brandon chose. They tend to like the guaranteed upside of getting $500, but just like Brandon, they'll gamble more when they could lose money. and lose that $1,000 extra, the 1,000 of what they have, half of what they have.
Yeah, that's totally true about me. I'll take the extra 500, but when I have 2,000, I don't want to lose it, right? I'm willing to gamble a little more to keep my 2,000 than to lose some of that money.
Yeah. So the cognitive bias that we're looking at here is called loss aversion. Logically, you should choose the same thing in both scenarios because there's really just 3 options. You end up with the same amount of money, that kind of thing. But consciously, you go against that logic because you have this bias away from loss.
Yep. And, I'm not logical sometimes.
That's true.
Yeah. Now, this is all fun and games, but what about when I have a real $1,000 or $2,000? Like, doing this flip game on a board or, just talking about it. It's all fun. But again, what if I have a real $1,000 or $2,000?
Yeah. So I did study psychology in college. That's what my bachelor's is in psychology, but I would not consider myself an expert here. As best as I can understand it, if you have real money in your hand, I feel like we're always scared we're going to lose it. Even though money slips through our fingers every single day, whether we're paying our rent or mortgage, we're buying food, life is expensive. We lose money every day by spending it. But also for those that are a little savvy, we know that we're also losing money simply because of the time value of money, simply because of inflation, right? And we're very cognizant of that in 2022, right? So what I feel like is when we have that $2,000, we want to do anything possible to make sure it doesn't turn into $1,000, right? That doesn't get cut in half by inflation. And I feel like we're more inclined to take risks because of that fear of loss. It's not so much that we're pursuing a big rate of return as much as we're afraid that our value of money is going to be lost and we're going to lose money.
Now, that hasn't always been as prevalent. As of 1952, only 4.2% of Americans actually invested in stocks, right? Because that's kind of how the stock market is kind of like wanting to make that big rate of return, right? So in 1952, only 4.2% of Americans invested. In 2022, 58% of Americans own stock. So what changed? And are we better for it? That's a question I want to leave to you.
Yeah, and I tried to research this. I looked into it, like what's made 58% of Americans to own stocks now when it used to be only 4.2% in 1952. And sure, we have things like 401ks and IRAs that didn't exist back then. And a lot of the time we're pressured to put money into the stock market in those things, even though that's not the only option when we're opting to use those retirement accounts. But then I came across a very interesting graph. I was thinking about this idea of inflation and maybe how we have this loss aversion. So we take more risk simply because of inflation. And here's what I found. Now, this is where you're probably going to want to see the screen. I'll try to describe this as best as I can. This is a graph I found from usdata.org that shows inflation since 1800. Back in 1800, if you took $1, what is that dollar the equivalent to throughout the years? And we see during the 1800s little blips of inflation, but it stays relatively even. There's a little increase just before 1920. There's some inflation there, but it's still not very high. Maybe like $1.50 is what it ends up going up to in value. But then about 1950, we start to see the graph go up. It only goes up to maybe about $2.50 or so by 1968. And then it starts to look exponential from there. It starts a very steep up into the right path from about 1968 all the way through 2022. And in fact, we see this really stark incline in the last couple years at the very end.
Do you know who was president in 1958, 68?
You'll have to look that up.
I'm curious. I'm just curious as to what happened. Was that when the gold standard thing happened and all that?
I'd have to go back and fact check my dates. We'll leave that to the audience because I also want to show you the next image here. Because as I was looking at this, I thought, well, what's the stock market done throughout that time? And I couldn't go back to 1800. I got back to, I think this is like 1915, the Dow Jones from 1915 to 2022. This comes from macrotrends.net. And you see it's super low, very low, just little, and maybe this is like 1920s right here. You know, you get barely a blip on the radar, 1929. I don't even know if that's really it, but it probably is. And then we get up here to 1950. Remember, at this point, 4% of Americans are invested in the stock market, and it's still really low. And then somewhere, this is probably 1980 or so, it skyrockets. And we see that up and to the right. We see a little blip during
2000.
The dot-com in 2000. We see the blip in 2008 with the Great Recession. And of course, we see the pandemic here, and then also 2022 at the very end here. But it's very interesting if you flip back and forth between these and you look at the stock market and you look at inflation. Now, I know correlation does not mean causation. There are lots of factors at force here, but I ask you to search within your heart of hearts. If you're investing in the stock market, could it be because you're concerned about inflation eating away at the value of your dollar? And might it be that the reverse could be true? The more we put into the market, the higher our inflation could be.
Oh, yeah. I mean, who knows? But I think that looking at this and saying, even looking at our quality of life, right? And saying, okay, well, what do we want to be different, right? What do we want to see? And I don't know, how do our lives want to reflect, right? And do we want to have that craziness, right?
Yeah. What I want to get to here with this first point is that we have cognitive biases. We have loss aversions. There are all kinds of things we do that are not necessarily logical. They're emotional. And we see too much that sets people up to become collateral damage. That sets us up for the sales and marketing messages to coerce us to do something different than what we might do if we know the full story. And I want to go to more of the full story next. Are you ready to go there, Brandon? Did you have something you wanted to add first?
No, I just think, again, looking at those graphs, kind of going back and forth and asking yourself those questions, really, and not having a lens of this is right or this is right, but going into it and saying, okay, where am I being marketed to do the things that may not be good for me, but it's good for somebody else? And I believe that happens all the time, every day, and asking those questions of yourself. And that's why math, destruction and math really matters.
And here we go, some fun with math. So what I'm looking to do with this fun with math is show you how you can make 8% in the stock market and still lose money. What? You can make an 8% average rate of return, positive 8%, and still lose money. You ready for this, Brandon?
Yeah.
Okay. So what happens to the same 8% average return when volatility increases? Now, by volatility, we mean the stock market goes up and down and up and down and up and down. Okay. So in three of these scenarios, you're going to put in $100. And you're not going to put anything more in. You're going to keep it simple, $100. And in one, you're going to get a straight 8% annually. In the second one, you're going to go up 30% and then down 20%. Then the third one,
36%, right?
Up 36, yep. Yeah. And then the third one, you're going to go up 56% and down 40%, which over 10 years, they all become an 8% average rate of return. Watch what happens. The first one here, after a year, you've got $108, right? You're getting 8%. And you're getting 8% annually. So it just goes up and to the right, no volatility there. At the end of 10 years, you've got $216. If you walk into any financial advisor's office and you ask them for a graph, if you give them $100, what would they do with it? Or $1,000 or $100,000? The numbers don't matter. This is the kind of graph they're probably going to show you.
Yep.
Straight line projection, taking 8% or 7% or 10%, doesn't matter the percent they use, but they're going to show you up and to the right like this. But we all know that volatility happens.
We are experiencing a lot of it now as a world, and that inflation word too. That's why we're having this video of inflation and volatility and how this comes together. So
yeah, so
it's huge.
Here we go. Here's the second scenario that's up 36%, down 20%. After a year, you've got $136. You're super excited. This financial advisor told you you were going to get 8% return. And look, you got 36% up. And then the next year it went down 20%. So you think, well, at least I'm up 16% still.
Yep.
Because 36 minus 20 is 16. That's, how most of us think about math, but you're not really. You're actually down a lot because increasing by 36% and then you're decreasing 20% of the 136, not the 20% of the 100. And so on it goes, up 36, down 20, and the high, when it goes up 36%, you're excited. Your professional's doing a really great job. You're very enthused. Goes down 20%. You're like, well, at least it's always going up. It'll recover. You're hearing that kind of language.
Don't look right now while it's going down.
Yeah,
it'll come back.
And after 10 years, you did get that 8% average rate of return, but now you only have $152 instead of $216. Now, again, if you want to add a few zeros after this, can you imagine expecting in, let's say you're going to retire in 10 years and 10 years to have $216,000 and now you only have $152,000. That's a big difference for someone for their retirement, right? Or maybe it's 2.1 and you only have 1.5 million, right? Like add as many zeros as you need to make this really feel real to you because this is what's really happening for folks.
And it's still 8% average on both, right?
Yeah. But wait, what happens if we increase volatility a little bit more? What if we have a super volatile market? Look at this. Up 56%. After the end of the first year, you've got $156 on your 100. You're super excited. Man, you hired the right guy. He picked the right stocks for you. You're super excited.
Sounds like
56%.
Sounds like May of 2022 or 2020, something like that. Like we had a really high after that low.
You pick GameStop at the right time, something like that. Yeah. But then the next year goes down 40%. You think, well, I'm still up 16 and you're not, because that's not how these percentages work. But then it just keeps going up 56, down 40, up 56. Look at this. At the end of 10 years, you have $72. Let that sink in for a second.
You put in 100 and you have $72.
Yep. You made a positive 8% average return, but fun/not so fun fact, you lost money. You can lose money with an 8% average rate of return.
But I thought people tell me 8%, you always go for that because you're never going to lose money. So you're telling me that you can.
Well, and where are most people seeing what was my rate of return in my stock portfolio, my 401k, my IRA? What's the rate of return?
Usually on the report.
Yeah, on the annual statement, right? And the annual statement is probably just going to show you, hey, look, you got an 8% average return. It's going to show year to date since the inception. This is what your return is. They have all kinds of fun math they put into that return that we're not showing you here. They can include your extra contributions, right? We're just starting with $100, never add anything more. They can, we're not including any fees here, any taxes that might be due. None of that's being factored in here. We're keeping it really simple. But if you weren't tracking this, if you weren't paying attention, you think you got an 8% average rate of return all along the way. And yet, when you finally look at your numbers the day before you're going to retire, you have less money than when you started.
Yeah. And let's be honest, Amanda, how many people have you met that track the amount that they put in to see how the real math works? How many people do you know that do that?
I know one, and he is amazing. It was actually pretty easy. He just kept updating the numbers in a little software system. He would just record them. And he forgot to update his reporting for a while. And he thought, oh, nothing's changing. And then he updated his reporting and saw a totally different story. And right, because he actually saw the full graph. And I do that actually. I don't have, we track everything, all of our different accounts. We're seeing what it really does. Usually update on a monthly basis. Sometimes it becomes quarterly, but and if you do this, I'd love to know how you do it so I can help more people do it too.
Well, that's all saying is that not very many people track their investments. Maybe they look at the spreadsheet and they don't track what they're putting in as well. Maybe they're saying, I have a 401k and my company matches. They're not tracking that match thing and all the other stuff because it can seem complicated, right? And then we're left wondering, hey, wait, I thought I was good, but I'm not. Yeah. I think that's a challenge, right?
Right. But this is why we're told not to look, because they don't want us to sell when we're down, right? Because there's the possibility that we could still end up here. And they don't want us to, have that loss aversion, anything like that, and sell. They want us to keep their money with them.
And from some of that, it looks like getting up to that green line, it become less and less likely,
right?
With the volatility as well. So then we're told one thing, still given a dream of this is what it's going to do whenever it doesn't. And that's crazy and insane sometimes to think through that.
Right. But are we going to sell when it's $72 or when it's whatever this number is here? Probably not, because we don't want to sell when it's down either. So we're going to hope that it goes back up, and it becomes a vicious cycle.
Yeah. And then and that's kind of the abusive relationship where we will say, oh, but they're okay. I can stay in this until it hits us. And then we're like back down and then going in that cycle again, which is not healthy.
And so, I'm getting really sad. I want to bring some hope to the conversation now.
Yeah. So I want to think about a wealth wisdom approach, right? What is a wealth wisdom approach? A smart, stable financial future that we can see. Like, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, we talk about every single episode. We say, we hope you break through to a smart, stable financial future. What are we talking about here? And I want to show you some numbers. These numbers are real. I did pull them a couple years ago for a special episode that we were doing. And I thought, I'm going to put a link to that episode if people want to know the full story behind where these numbers come from and how they were developed. But in that episode, we just showed them line by line in number form, and it was kind of overwhelming. Today, I'm going to just show you a graph. And we're going to talk through how this graph works, what we're seeing here, and how we have come to value smart, stable financial strategies because of what this graph shows. You ready to look at it?
Yeah. Do we talk about stability now, or do you want to go ahead and show that graph?
I think I showed the graph, and then let's talk about stability.
Cool.
Because I want people to feel this graph, and then you talk about. Okay, so here we go. This is pretending we're working with a 35-year-old female. This was me 2.5 years ago, something like that. And we're planning over 30 years by the time this 35-year-old female is 65, right? And there's a blue line that represents whole life insurance cash value. And there's a green line that represents an alternative value, which is really buy term and invest the difference. And what you see, if you're seeing the screen, and I'll try to describe this for our listeners here, is the blue line looks very similar to that up and to the right that we're seeing before. It starts really low in year one and slowly but surely goes up. It has a little bend to it, but it's going up over the 30 years. The green line, the buy term and invest the difference type line, is a little higher at the beginning. In year 3, it dips below the blue line. Then it goes and it's higher again until year 8, and then it dips again. What we are seeing here is real S&P 500 results where volatility is included. So these first 3 years have the .com thing in there. Year 9 is 2008 to see the Great Recession kick in. Then we've got this amazing recovery. The green line goes way super high, well above the blue line. This is when most people are like, I made the right choice. I'm going to buy term and invest the difference. And look how my investments are doing. I'm getting a 13% rate of return. Aren't I amazing? Haven't I made the best decision? And then some more volatility kicks in. And we see this green line soar down 3 years in a row, 1, 2, 3. And now we're well below the blue line, but then there's a recovery. It goes right back up until we get to the next volatility marker and it goes down. We end the 30 years with the blue line significantly higher than the green line. Now, I purposely took out the numbers here. Doesn't really matter if this is $1 million or $100,000, but you can imagine that it would feel very different for someone if this is $1 million that they were building over time and they end up with much less. The important thing to see here is how these are different and what's happening here and how volatility compares with true uninterrupted compound interest. So let's dig into this. What do you mean by stability? Brandon, talk us through that part.
Yeah, I think stability is worth more than we realize, right? And looking at it right now, we're in that volatile market and maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we were on the green side thinking, oh man, it's amazing. And now we're in can we pay for beans and rice, right? And that's not good. So we want to go back to relationships, right? And this is really important. Your relationship with money is with you from the minute you get your first dollar to your deathbed. Right? This relationship with money, how you are enacted on or using it, right? It's again, a relationship. So you might spend your money on different adventures and you might have more or less at different times. So again, looking at that green line, whenever you're at the top, we might spend it differently than we are when we are at the bottom of that green line, right? In saying, okay, but that's not necessarily healthy, or it brings about fear and all that other stuff. So what is your relationship to money, and how is that affecting other relationships in your life, right? And again, looking at that abusive kind of relationship idea of, hey, how am I going back or being manipulated by it? How do I become more consistent is kind of the thing I want to show in my relationships with other people. The other thing is sleeping well at night and not being stressed about money is very important to me, right? I don't want to be worrying about what's coming up next with the market or with whatever Netflix stock or who knows what's coming. I think that's important, having that no little stress and being able to sleep well at night. Would you rather have $1 million and be stressed, or have $500K and be financially free? Again, $1 million and be stressed, or have $500K and be financially free? But it's not just an emotional thing. What if you could come out ahead and still have financial serenity? What if you could do both?
Yeah. And so what Brandon's talking about here is here at this peak that you see on this graph in year 18. This is when a lot of people will be sleeping well at night until they wake up the next day and they see what comes next. And then they're not going to sleep well for 3 years. But with the blue line, there's no not sleeping well, right? Like things are continuing to go up and we're not concerned about what's happening. Even though we have less money, some of that's really important. But also, if you look at the very end here, we slept really well at night, right? We saw the uninterrupted compounding growth working in our favor with no volatility, and we still came out ahead at the end of 30 years. Now, these numbers aren't what everybody would get. These are all looking back at history. The future is going to be very different. But this example is something that a lot of people don't ever get to see. This is what we like to think of as smart, where you think about the emotions, you think about how important stability is to you, but you also look at the numbers like we're showing you, and you think about what's really going to happen, right? You're likely not a 35-year-old female. The market's never going to repeat itself exactly, and so on and so forth. But this chart is meant to show you the possibilities, not just be a prescription or a projection or anything like that. Think of this as one version of an infinite number of metaverses. And you're way down here at year 0 in the bottom of this chart. And you're saying, which ride do I want to go on? But here's the fun thing. You don't have to pick one or the other.
Yeah.
We're going to talk more about that in the next episode. But what's cool about the blue line is that you can still have access to these dollars without having to interrupt the compounding. So stay tuned. We don't have time to go into that today. I think it's time for our recap.
Yeah. And I love that you brought in the metaverse, and, that means I have some influence on you, with the whole Marvel, DC stuff. But yeah. And I believe that we're all in some sort of metaverse thinking through, and we should think in those kind of ways when we're thinking about our money and what are the infinite possibilities and how can we be in a better position. So
a smart, stable
position. Yeah. So we took this journey today to underscore 3 points. We're often shown math that has the potential to make us collateral damage to stock market losses. And we are seeing it today, right? And I don't want to see that for you. Right? So when you sit down with a financial advisor, you're usually only shown the straight line projection. If volatility has not been factored into your financial strategy, then your strategy is missing a factor we know will be there throughout. There will be things that happen, what they call black swan events, all kinds of things. And it might not be in the market. It might be, in your own family. Somebody passes away or something. It's volatility. So,
or that one stock that you bought, or that one, ETF or whatever. So that's the first thing, is when to show you kind of how you're set up to have some math destruction because you're not shown the full math. And then the second one is we want to say it's okay to make decisions not just based on math. We have this natural tendency to avoid loss. We take more risk if we feel like we could lose. We want you to be aware of that part, right? Those cognitive biases that we all have because we're all human. We shared one with you today. There's many of them because just
watch TV.
We know that there are sales and marketing people out there with their messages that they know your cognitive biases, and they're going to use that to get you to do business with them. They know that you've got that loss aversion and they want to get you to do something that you might not do if you saw the other side, like the game we played earlier, where you the big reveal of, hey, this is what's really happening, the cognitive bias that you have. So we might come back to some of those in future episodes, but there's all kinds of information out there from actual experts about cognitive bias. So you can learn more about it and be on the lookout for it.
Like psychologists and therapists and things like that. Not that we've learned a lot. You do have that psychology degree that you use on me sometimes.
No.
And the most important is that you do not need to feel like or be collateral damage of stock market losses. Again, you do not need to stay in an unhealthy relationship with Wall Street. You can choose to include stocks in a healthy way, along with a financial foundation that brings you peace of mind no matter what happens with the Dow Jones or with inflation. You, again, do not need to be collateral damage.
So hit that subscribe button, because next time we're going to talk about the importance of accessibility. Just like we all need access to financial wisdom so that we can build well, having access to your dollars for emergencies and opportunities is a value most don't remember to include in their financial strategies until it's too late, or until an amazing opportunity, like, say, a pandemic. Listen for the next episode to learn more.
So until next time, keep building your wealth simply and sustainably so you can break through to a smart, stable financial future. And we hope you live long and profit. And don't forget to write a review for this episode. The topics presented in this podcast are for general information only and not for the purpose of providing legal, accounting, or investment advice. On such matters, please consult a professional who knows your specific situation.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.